Well, I don't really feel like going to work tomorrow, but hey, at least I don't have to fight a half alien, half predator monster thing in pitch black. Hey there, thanks for tuning into the Sunday Scaries. I'm your host, Mike, and today we're going to be talking about AVP Requiem, or also known as AVP 2, whatever you want to call it. But this is the second installment and final one in the Alien vs. Predator series. This one did not do that hot, both with the box office and with fan reception, so they didn't continue the series. But it's an interesting film. You have the Pred Alien that came out at the end of the last movie, immediately pop out and start killing all the predators, and the ship crash lands in this town in Colorado. And it makes for a really interesting setting because the aliens start getting out, they start going after the townspeople. The townspeople don't really know what's going on, and the townspeople are really outdoorsy, and they all have, you know, forgettable but interesting enough personalities to where there's some tension between the aliens and the townspeople, just a little bit. But of course, you can't just have the townspeople fighting the aliens, and you got a predator who gets some signal from the home planet, and he immediately goes and decides to go to Earth and take out the aliens all by himself. So it really becomes one predator versus all the aliens, all by himself, really. And this time he's not going to play nice like in the last one. There's no really strong female character for the predator to team up with, and so this time it's really just the predator going after all the aliens going after the predator and all the townspeople, and then, you know, the townspeople sometimes get in the way of the predator and they don't make it very long. So that is the basic premise of this film. Now, the other interesting thing about this film is the last one, which I think is a really fun addition to the franchise, was only PG-13. And a lot of fans were disappointed in that because the gore was turned down a little bit. It wasn't quite as a horror film as either franchise really had in the past. So there was some disappointment there, and I totally get that perspective, but it was a fun film. And it was made so that a lot of fans, even if you hadn't seen the series up until that point of either franchise, could watch it. This film goes the complete opposite way. This is a very gory movie compared to the last one, and it's also a much meaner movie. They show a lot of the people suffering in it. There's some things that I really don't think they needed to add into it. And a lot of fans actually, who were calling for a much more rated R film, don't like this movie and think they went a little overboard, which is funny, right? Be careful what you wish for. But you know, there's things from pregnant women being hurt to little kids getting chest busters popping out their chest. It just is a much meaner film than the last one in that regard. And I think the characters are even more of a drop off than the last film, which, you know, wasn't a very high bar, but at least they had Lex. And in this one, you have, you know, like a guy out of prison trying to help his brother. His brother's, you know, got a crush from high school or whatever, and he's just a pizza boy, and there's the dumb jock. You got, you know, the town sheriff that's overwhelmed. Just, you know, random characters like that. A woman comes home from the army and she hasn't seen her daughter in a long time, and, you know, characters like that, and they could be good, but they're just not developed very well. They're very forgettable. You really don't have a lot of emotions attached to anybody, and you're not really rooting for any of the human characters, which, again, at least in the last film you had Lex, and she was a pretty good character. I'm not gonna hit themes as much in this one, just because they're pretty redundant compared to any of the other past ones. You know, you have a little bit of the Weyland Yukatani Corporation stuff going on. You have big government, mistrust there, things like that. There is a little bit more of a horror element to this one than the past one, where you really have that survival, like getting thrown in the middle of something you don't understand and you had no idea you'd be fighting for your life that day. At least in the last one, you know, there were Antarctica expedition type people, so they kind of knew what was going on as far as that they were in a, you know, high stakes environment. But this one taps a little more into that. But the real thing to talk about with this film is just how bad the production quality is. Now, I think there's some really good action in this film, and I think the story could have been developed a little bit better. So you could have had the same story, but if you just filmed it a little bit different, maybe had a little bit better acting, it would have been a lot more fun. But unfortunately, because you don't have any characters you really care about, it's not paced in the best way, and unfortunately, the lighting is horrible in this film. A lot of it's at night, and a lot of the action sequences you can't really see, and I don't really get it. I mean, I have to assume that they could have had a light on when they were filming or somehow brightened it up in editing. You know, I'm not quite sure. I'm not a film expert, but clearly they could have done something differently so that you could at least see all the action going on. And when you do see some of the action, I think it's pretty cool, and I think it could be fun, but because it's so choppy and you never really get a long sequence to really get to enjoy the predator, you know, going after the aliens, or even the human characters trying to fight back with the aliens, it's really, really difficult. And there's even like a really cool swimming pool scene that I think would be neat if you could just see it a little bit better. You get this like alien in a pool, and there's all these high school kids in there, and it's dark, and they don't know what's going on. They don't really know there's monsters running around, and it's coming after them, and you just can't see much. And it's kind of like the Blair Witch Project, where people are just running around and it's all this chaos, clearly not filmed in a found footage way, but similar. You just can't figure out what is going on. And that really drags the movie down as a whole, which is a shame, because you know, this movie had a lot of potential to be really fun, really exciting, really get both fan bases going. You know, and the last one I think gave a good enough foundation to this that we should have got another Alien vs. Predator, but this one was so lackluster and just not fun, over the top gory, bad story, and just poorly filmed, bad editing. And it just kind of ruined this and made both franchises try to go back to their original franchises and try to find a new path forward for films. Now, the one thing I will say as far as themes go is this does have the big, like the government and a big corporation is going to try to cover things up and protect themselves over all else. And you know, the ending of the film really does tie into some of the big characters in the Alien franchise with, again, the Weyland Yukatani group. They were kind of helping the government, you know, keep this under wraps. You know, they nuked the town and try to kill everyone that were there. They are able to confiscate a weapon at the end, and I'm assuming use it for technology, which will be used in future films. You know, Prometheus really tackles the time period of kind of how the Weyland group really launches as a company into space and do deep space exploration, and that'll be the next movie I cover, which I love actually, Prometheus, even though it's a much different tone than really any of the other ones in the franchise. But you know, that is kind of neat that they do it, but again, it's also kind of just redundant at this point, and you've seen it so many times. And I will say this is the last film so far, because I have not seen Alien Romulus yet, but this is the last film so far to really have that theme. And I do think Prometheus and Alien Covenant go in much different directions with that. But the franchise is going to get a little away from horror as a whole moving forward in the next two films. All right, so now getting into rankings, my overall ranking is only a 1 out of 5. I don't think it's quite as bad as Alien 3. And again, I know on my last review of Alien 3, I got a lot of defenders of it, but I think this is a little better than that, which again, low bar given I didn't think it was very good. But you know, I think this movie could be much better, even if they just edited it a little bit differently, even without any improvements in the acting or the story. It could be a little bit better, just lightening up a little bit. Honestly, turning down the gore, getting rid of some of the really mean stuff and putting in just a little more fun, like action scenes, a little bit more of maybe characters we don't really like getting killed off instead of like really innocent characters that you know, we have no reason not to like. You know, little things like that I think really would have been a big improvement on this addition to the franchise. But with that said, the overall fun meter, you know, I do actually think it's a little bit better. I think it's a 2 out of 5. I definitely could watch this one a lot more than I can like Alien 3 again, or another edition of this franchise that we'll get to later on. But you know, again, I think there's some good action in it. The issue is I just can't see it. But some of the stuff I can see, there are some good fight scenes in it. But some of the scenes I can see, you know, there are some good fight scenes in it, and that does let me rewatch it again if I'm trying to power through the franchise, even though it's not one I particularly love. I'll probably be washing dishes or something during certain parts of the film. And some of the bad acting is a little bit in that category of it's so bad it's funny and you can have fun with it, especially if you're with some friends. Particularly the brother of the guy that like got out of prison. I think he's such a dork, and everything he does, I'm like, come on, bro. Like, are you really gonna do that? Like, that's not gonna work. So yeah, I can have a little bit of fun with this movie, even though, again, I think it's just a poorly done film as a whole from a production standpoint. And all I know is, at least tomorrow, I'm doing something a little more interesting at work than watching AVP 2.